What's going on, guys? Welcome to your 23rd tutorial, and in this tutorial I want to talk to you guys a little more about event handlers. So before, we learned that you can take a basic event handler such as the on-click event handler and you could place it somewhere such as in a form button. But now what I want to show you guys is there are more event handlers than that basic on-click, and also you can place them in different locations. You're not only limited to form buttons. You can place them in links and actually some places where you probably never even think of. So let's go ahead and make one type of event handler, and this is called the on mouse over event handler, and this gets called whenever you mouse over an element. For example, you don't have to click it, you don't have to, highlight it. As soon as your mouse hovers over it, that's when it gets called. So, we could do it with a form button, but we already did that. So let's go ahead and try something new. And let's go ahead and make a link. And might as well make it to the greatest website of all time, the new Boston.com. And go ahead and might as well end that. And let's go ahead and write some text like hover over me exclamation point, because we really want to emphasize this. So what I like to do is save it, launch it in Chrome, and click it. Make sure our link works. Alright, we're good to go so far. So now we have a basic link on the screen. So now let's go ahead and add that on mouse over event handler. So just like before, like the on click, we add it kind of as an attribute, and that's on mouse over with the M and the O capitalized. Now, as your value, we can set it equal to JavaScript code. So let's just go ahead, and I'm just going to make basic alert boxes. You can do different things, but an alert box is just the easiest to see what's going on with this example. So alerts, and then just go ahead and write something stupid like game time, because I feel like playing Call of Duty right now. So let's go ahead and save this and refresh it and check it out. I'm not going to click it and I'm not going to highlight it. I'm just going to scroll, have my mouse go over it, and as soon as it hovers over it, an alert box pops up that says game time. So that is the beauty of the on mouse over. You don't have to click it. As soon as you hover over it, maybe it should be called on hover over, but it isn't. I don't name them. So that's the basics of that. So now that I mentioned on mouse over, I feel compelled to mention this one. On mouse out. And this is a little bit different. It's whenever you are hovering over a link and you don't click it, but you take your mouse away from it, then that's what this is get called. So let's just go ahead and put game time. Be like, hey, come back. So now let's go ahead and save it and see what happens. Again, no clicking involved here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mouse, hover over it, nothing happens still. But whenever we take it away, that's when that event handler is going to get called in again. That's on mouse out. Whenever you take your mouse away from an element. So it says, hey, come back. Then you go ahead and click OK. So technically, if you had a web page and you had like 200 links on it, you could add one of these to every link, and then you can create the most annoying web page ever. But who would want to do that? If you do, then go ahead and send me a link and I'll check it out. But anyways, let's go ahead and get rid of that for now. And actually, might as well go ahead and get rid of this entire link, because I want to talk to you guys about a different subject. Now that we know that you can add event handlers to different elements on a web page, I'm going to show you guys one place where you probably wouldn't think that you could add event handlers, and that's in the body tag itself. So go ahead and actually, before we get to that, just add some text on the screen, yada yada yada, and save it and check it out. Our web page loads and we have some basic text on the screen just like that. So we can't just add any event handler to the body, like we can't add on click or on mouse over. There are specific event handlers that you can add to your body tags, and one of those is called on load. And this is going to get called, if I hit my caps lock, this is going to get called whenever your web page is done loading. So let's go ahead and just make a basic alert and make something that says like your web page or website has loaded exclamation point. Did I spell everything wrong? This wrong, this right, this right, this wrong. Perfect. So let's go ahead and save this, run it, and I'll show you guys what happens. Our web page loads, and when it's done loading, it just says your website has loaded. Good enough. Okay. So you might be thinking, I know it looks like everything's happening at the same time, but if you had a slow motion camera, you could see that your web page loads and then the JavaScript pops up. So that's why it's a little bit different than saying this. Alright, Bucky, if you're going to do that, then why wouldn't you just have the JavaScript right here? Well, sometimes you don't want to run JavaScript as soon as your web page starts loading. You want to run it as soon as everything is complete. And right now, I'm just making alert boxes, and it's not really a useful example, but later on I'll show you guys why it would be useful to load a bit of code after your website has loaded. So now that I showed you guys the onload alert, or excuse me, the onload event handler, you guys are probably thinking, all right, then is there on unload? Wow, definitely had my caps locked, and I definitely typed everything wrong. So on unload, there we go. So now let's go ahead and see what this does. But instead of your website has loaded, because that doesn't make sense anymore, just go ahead and write like goodbye. So the on unload event gets called whenever the user exits a web page, and they can do this by clicking a link and it takes them to another web page, or even if they try to close out of their browser, this code is going to run before it lets them go. So let's go ahead, and I already saved this, refresh it, and it says goodbye. So let me go ahead, and the reason it said goodbye already is because whenever I refreshed it, I left that web page. So check it out. So now I have a web page with that onload. I cannot talk tonight. On unload function already in there. So whenever I try to close out of my browser, it's going to stop me before and it's going to say goodbye. So let's go ahead and close out of this, and it says goodbye before it lets me leave. So click OK, and now let's go ahead and just launch it in Chrome again. See, it loads perfectly like that because we haven't left it yet. So again, whenever I try to close it out of my browser, it says, alright, before you go, I just want to say goodbye. I'll miss you. Farewell. So now you can see the basics of, different types of event handlers. Not only are there different kinds of event handlers like on click, on mouse over, on mouse out, and then your loads, but you can also begin to see that we can stick them in different locations. We're not only limited to buttons or links, and we're not even limited to the body, but in the upcoming tutorials, I'm going to show you guys all the different types and places and why they're useful, and we're going to be getting more in depth because this is one of the main concepts behind JavaScript, and now we can start to see we're beginning to build smarter and more interactive web pages. But for now, that's all you get. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. What is going on, guys? It's Bucky, and welcome to your 24th tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm gonna begin talking about object-oriented programming, what objects are, and I'm also going to be showing you guys some built-in objects in JavaScript. So object-oriented programming is definitely one of the coolest features on JavaScript, but it's also one of the most easily misunderstood. So if you ever took a JavaScript class, or maybe you're taking one right now, or maybe just someone tried to explain objects to you, it sounded so confusing and it was just totally twisted and you didn't really understand anything. And also, if you ever read any books, then it was like, what the heck are they talking about? So everything up until now has been pretty easy with computer programming. I mean, we pretty much could read something or watch the video and understand it. But object-oriented programming, it kind of throws a twist on computer programming because everything was kind of set out for you before, but now we're going to be beginning to kind of make our own data types and stuff like that. So before I confuse you any further, let me just say this. I'm going to be making it really easy to understand what objects are, so just stick with my videos and trust me, it's going to be a whole lot more simple for you. So let me just say this. If you don't even know what an object is, I'll just put it in the most basic terms. An object is pretty much a weird piece of data that has its own properties and methods. For example, I'm not talking about computer programming language here, I'm talking about real life. If I was an object, Bucky Roberts, I would have my own properties, and my properties would be like things you could put in variables like hair color, brown, favorite baseball team, Red Sox, eye color, brown, car, blue, height, 5'6", weight, 180, whatever. Even though I'm not 180, just saying. Alright, so now we have an object with all these properties. And aside from properties, I can also have something called methods. Now, methods would be the thing that the object does. So let's list some methods for Bucky Roberts. Drive a car, eat Hot Pockets, make video tutorials, play Call of Duty. So now you can see that an object has two things: properties, which are all the variables, and methods, which are all the things that the object does. So now, combining those two things, you have a pretty good blueprint or outline of me, of my life, of my object. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the properties and methods that are already built in JavaScript. So let's go ahead and make just a regular variable called tuna, and we'll set this equal to some text like, hey, I am a tuna fish, exclamation point. Well, check it out. Did you know that this variable tuna is indeed an object with its own properties? So in order to get the properties or get the methods of an object, we need to use something called a dot separator. And in order to do this, the syntax is this: go ahead and list your object, which is in this case tuna, then go ahead and add your dot separator. And after this, you can go ahead and list all the properties or all the methods that are associated with this object. So like I said, even though you may not know it, tuna has a property in it, and this is built in the JavaScript already. I'm not making any of this up. It's called length, just like that. And what this does is it counts how many characters are in the variable, which I don't know, this is probably somewhere close to 18 or something, and it pretty much just lists it as a number. It's one of the properties associated with that variable. So if we wanted to write it out on the screen, just write document write, and then we just go ahead and write tuna dot length. So let's go ahead and save this, refresh, and see what we get. 21. I was a little bit off, but anyways, now we can see that this object tuna, which is actually a variable, it has a property of it called length, and that length pretty much tells you a little more about this tuna object. So that's basically one of the properties that is built into JavaScript. But for example, one of my properties would be like Bucky hair, and that would say brown. Eyes, that would say brown too. Weight, that would be like 150. So that is basically what a property is. So like I said, objects have two things: properties and methods. We already took a look at properties. Now let's go ahead and take a look at methods. And in order to do this, we don't even have to learn anything new because we've been using something all along. And that is document dot write. And then this is how you write something out on the screen, like, hey now, brown cow. So I know I didn't talk about this really before because I didn't want to talk about object-oriented programming, but now it is time to understand what this all means. Well, believe it or not, the document is actually an object itself. If you're looking at your web browser right here, you see a bunch of little pieces: the toolbar, the your favorites, the X, maximize, minimize, and this big white box right here that's pretty much the body of your web page. It's a big white square, and in JavaScript language, this is called the document of your web page. So that's where the object, the document, gets its name from. It's pretty much a document. So all these pieces, those are called different things, but this is the document object. If it had properties, it would be white, rectangle, four sides. Maybe you could calculate its perimeter or area or anything, but those would be all the properties associated with it. Now the methods with the document, it can do basically one thing we learned so far, and that's write text on the screen. So now you can see that just like before, you write your object name to the left hand side, which is document, and to the right hand side you write the method, and this method is called write. So that's why you can use objects and methods to actually do something. So for example, if you're writing something with my object, you would write Bucky right here, and you would write eat Hot Pockets right here, or you might write Bucky make tutorials right there. But now the object is document, and one of the methods is write. And of course, I don't have to tell you guys what this means. It just means write text out on the screen. So all I wanted to get through you guys in this tutorial is There are some objects that are already built in JavaScript, and in order to use them, you go ahead and write the object name with the dot separator, and you can either write the variables or properties right here, or the functions and methods right there. So that is what a dot separator is, and that's the basics of objects. It's pretty much just something with its own properties and methods. Simple enough. So now you're saying, all right, that was interesting and all. So now what do you want me to do? Like go ahead and memorize every single object that's built in JavaScript? Well, you can do that, but it'll be kind of a waste of time. The reason I'm showing you guys this is because in the next tutorial, I'm going to teach you guys how to create objects of your own. And like I said, I gave you guys an example like Bucky eat Hot Pockets and stuff, but we're going to be making objects and having them do computer related stuff like pop up alert boxes and open windows and maybe make some calculations or something. So now that you understand the basics of an object and how you can separate things using a dot separator, we can begin making our very own objects. So I know this is a little confusing and different than what we've been learning before, but trust me, once you learn this, a whole new world is going to be open up to you, and your life, you're going to feel fulfilled. So if you had any empty feeling in your heart before, or maybe you were depressed, trust me, this is the best. This is the best medicine, object-oriented program. So that's all I have for you guys. That's my inspirational speech for this video. So thank you guys for watching. In the next video, we're going to be creating our very own objects. So I'll see you then. Alright guys, welcome back to your 25th JavaScript tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to teach you guys how to create your own objects. So like I said before, an object is pretty much a special type of data that has its own properties and its own methods. And today we're going to be creating an object that has a couple properties with it. We won't be talking about methods now, but maybe in the future tutorial, or definitely in the future tutorial, we will. So basically, there are a couple of different ways that we can make our own objects. One of the ways, and probably the easiest way, is to use something called a constructor function. And like I said before, an object is pretty much a blueprint. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So in order to make our own object, what people typically do is whenever they're making this blueprint, they go ahead and take the script and they stick it in the head. So let's go ahead and do that. Put your script tags in the head, and whenever we're printing stuff out, we try to do that in the body. So for now, since we're not printing anything out, let's just go ahead and stick this in the head. So in order to create this special thing called a constructor function, it looks basically just like any other function. Go ahead and type the name function just like that, and we're going to be making a blueprint, or aka object, for people. So go ahead and name it like person or people or whatever you want. So we have an object called person. Now let's go ahead and list some properties that are going to be associated with every person. We can't say like something very specific. We have to list properties that are associated with every person. So every person in the world has a name and they have an age. You can't list like favorite computer, because some people don't even have computers. So don't list something like that. Make it general, like a name and age. So now in your body, here is what we do. Now this is kind of weird, but this is how they set it up. Whenever we want to take a value and assign it to a person, we need to use a special keyword called this. And later on, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calling this method and being like Bucky Roberts 24. Taylor Swift 20, Bucky's mom 38. So we're going to be passing it in information and assigning it to that object. So in order to say, alright, we want to work with this current object, you need to give it a special keyword called this. I know it's weird, but this is what you have to do. And this basically means is we're working with the current object. Why it would ever work with another object, I don't know, but trust me, it's stupid. I understand, but it's what you have to do. So this current object's name is whatever name we pass in there. So it's going to take like Bucky Roberts, and it's going to assign it to the object's name. This is pretty much saying this: whatever information we pass in, and whatever information we want to assign to the object. That's all it does, really. So now we have to do it with age. This object's age is going to be equal to whatever the age we tell it to pass in. Simple enough. So I was saying, alright, this is basically called a constructor function, and it's basically a blueprint for a function. So now we have the blueprints right here, but we really don't have an object yet. All we have is the instructions telling us how to make one. So let's go ahead and make a couple objects right now. In order to make a new object, and by the way, let me just tell you guys this. I say make a new object, but if you're taking a test for college or something, it's actually called creating a new instance of an object. So I say it like, the straight up way, but the technical term, put on your quiz, create a new instance of an object. So, say that and your teacher will probably, I don't want to say get a hard on or something. So in order to create a new object, it's just like creating a new variable. Variable, and then you list the name of your object. I'm going to create a Bucky object. So in order to do that, go ahead and set it equal to this. Whenever you create a new instance, aka whenever you create an object, you have to use the keyword new. This is telling JavaScript we're about to create a new object. So after this, we write what blueprint do we want to use? Well, since we're going to be creating a new Bucky object and we only have one blueprint, obviously, it's going to be the person blueprint. So it says, alright, since you're using that person blueprint, it takes two pieces of information. The first thing that I need is the name, and the second thing I need is the age. Okay, let's go ahead and give that to you. Name, Bucky Roberts, age 24. And make sure, remember, any strings have to be in quotation marks and any numbers don't have to be. So that is basically how you create a new object. Your object's name, what blueprint you want to use, and any information it needs. So let's go ahead and create another one real quick. Var, let's make one for Taylor Swift since she is cute. New, of course, she's a person too, but her name, whoa, Taylor Swift, and I don't know her age, but I'm gonna guess like 20 or something. I don't know, who knows. Either she was 20 or she is gonna be 20 at one point, so good enough. So now we have two objects, a Bucky object and a Taylor object. Bucky object now has two properties. Its name is Bucky Roberts, and its age is 24. Oh, I got like kennel cough or something. And then we have a Taylor object. The Taylor object's name is Taylor Swift, and the Taylor object's age is 20. So that's pretty cool. We have a blueprint right here, and we actually created the objects down here. But why is this useful? Well, can we print it out or something? Oh, yes, we can. So remember, like I said, anytime you want to print something out, you should do so in the body. So let's go ahead and print out this stuff right now. Document, write. So anytime, just like before in the last tutorial, I told you guys, you want to use an object's properties, you need to list the name of the object. And let's go ahead, we have two objects to choose from, Bucky and Taylor. Let's go ahead and print out my name first. So list the name of your object, Bucky, and then using a dot separator, you list the name of its property or variables. So Bucky's name should print out Bucky Roberts. Pretty cool, huh? So let's go ahead and see another example. If we wanted to print out Taylor Swift's age, we would write the object Taylor, and the property we want to access is age. So let's go ahead and save this, and it should print out 20, just like that. So like I said, this is just a better way of organizing data. Instead of going, calling a function or anything like that to access Taylor Swift's age, the only thing we need to do now is list the name of the object and what property we want to access. So Bucky's name, Bucky's age, Taylor Swift's name, Taylor Swift's age. It's a whole lot easier than creating a bunch of functions to display all that information. So again, to recap one last time, in order to create the blueprint for an object, you pretty much do something called create a constructor function, and that is the technical name. And in order to do that, you write what type of object do you want to be making, and then list the information that it needs, and then say, alright, with that information that we're going to pass in, we want to assign it to that object. So Bucky's name is going to be Bucky Roberts. Taylor's age is going to be 20. And then, now that we have a blueprint, we can go ahead and make as many objects as we want. I made 2 in this example, but we can either make 5, 10, 5,000 if we want. It doesn't matter. And after that, whenever you want to use any information from an object, you go ahead and write the object's name and the variable or the properties associated with it. And again, don't forget, if you're watching this tutorial because your teacher confused you in JavaScript class or something like that, whenever you're creating objects, I say creating objects, but the technical term is creating an instance of an object. And the technical term for this is called a constructor function. So there you go. There's your answers for your test. And that's the basics of how to create our very own objects. So this is one way we can create objects. Another way, I'm going to be teaching you that in maybe a couple tutorials, maybe the next tutorial. I haven't decided yet, but for now, that's all you get. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out my website, and I will see you guys later. What's going on, guys? It's Bucky, and welcome back to your 26th JavaScript tutorial. Now, in one of the tutorials before, I told you guys that there are a couple different ways to create objects. One way is to use something called a constructor function. Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the different type of way, or another way to create objects, and this is called object initializers. An object initializer is a lot faster than a constructor function because it's only one line of code as opposed to a whole function and then creating the object. It pretty much takes everything and squishes it together in one line. And why would you use this, and when would you use a constructor function? You would use this whenever you're creating basically only one or two objects of the same type. For example, if you're creating like 500 person objects, then you probably want to use a constructor function. But if you're just creating one Bucky object or a Bucky and a Taylor object, then this is fine. So for this example, it's probably a little more easier, and this is probably what you want to do when you're just starting out making objects. So let's go ahead and in our head, since we're just going to be creating our objects now, not typing anything out, let's go ahead and create our objects right now. So you don't use the keyword var and you don't use the keyword new. The only thing you need to do when making object initializers is type the name of whatever you want your object to be named. And I want my object to be named Bucky. And go ahead and set that equal to all the properties you want to set it equal to, whatever it is. So like before, we made a constructor function that had a name and an age. Well, now let's go ahead and do the same thing. So in order to do that, go ahead and write the name of the property, which is name, then add a colon. Now after this, you write the value which you want it to equal. So I want the name of Bucky to be Bucky Roberts. And now you say, alright, we want another property now. So in order to do that, just go ahead and separate it with a comma, and then go ahead and type in the name of the property, which is age, and set this equal to whatever value you want to be equal to, 24. So as you can see, instead of writing each property on a separate line with the constructor function, all you do now is separate your properties with a comma and go ahead and list the property, colon, value. Property, colon, value. And I have two properties in here, but you can have 1,000 if you want. The only thing you have to remember is separate them all with a comma. Pretty cool, huh? So now let's go ahead and make another object. What the heck? What am I, Chinese? Just so we can see more clearly what's going on. So I'll go ahead and make that other Taylor object just like before, and sorry if I offended any Oriental people there, but one of the properties is name, and I would want this to be equal to Taylor Swift, and another property is age, so go ahead and add my comma, property age, and for the value is 20. So now we have two objects. Bucky's name is Bucky Roberts, Taylor's name is Taylor Swift, Bucky's age is 24, Taylor's age is 20. Easy enough. So now, just like before, the body can be the exact same. Anytime you want to use your object, it's no different than before. Just go ahead and write your object name, like Bucky, and then go ahead and write whatever property you want to use, like age, name, whatever. So let's go ahead and take a look at a quick example. Document.write, and go ahead and write like Bucky name loves Taylor name because she is Taylor age. Now let's see if I mixed anything up or messed it up or whatever. Bucky Roberts loves Taylor Swift because she is 20. Pretty cool. So like before, we can see that whenever we want to use one of these properties, just go ahead and write the object property, object property, object property. Simple enough, eh? So now we see that we have two different ways we can make objects using object initializers, which are these, or using constructor functions. And like I said, if we had more than two people like Bucky, Taylor, John, Steven, Tony, Mikey, Maddie, we would have to, I mean, we won't have to, but it's probably better to use a constructor function. But now that we only have one or two objects, using an object initializer is fine. So that's when you would use object initializers as opposed to constructor functions. So for now, that's all I have for you. In the next tutorial, I don't know what I'm going to be talking about, but trust me, it's going to be awesome. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out my website, yada yada yada, and I'll see you later. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 27th JavaScript tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you guys how to add methods to your objects. So let's go ahead, and the first thing that we need is a constructor function. So function, go ahead and name it just people or something, and just like before, we'll give it a name and an age. So all these people will have two properties, a name and an age, and we make sure of that by setting their object's name to whatever we pass in for name, and the object's age to whatever we pass in for age. Simple enough. So we have a constructor function. Now we can begin actually making objects. So var, let's go ahead and make an object called Natalie and set equal to, we don't need that yet, a new object from the people blueprint basically, and the name, it takes two parameters, first name, Natalie Portman, and her age, she's probably like 28, I'm guessing. I don't know, who knows. So anyways, we already know that we can access, Natalie's name, Natalie's age. We can go ahead and print that out, yada yada. We learned that before. But what we're learning in this tutorial is how to add methods to this object. And by the way, a method is pretty much just a function that uses some of these properties. So you know how a function might calculate the temperature converted to Fahrenheit to Kelvin? Well, methods take properties like this, like it would take her age, and calculate how many years until retirement, or calculate when she's going to die, or calculate when she was born, or something like that. So it takes some of these properties from this object and it makes a calculation with it. So let's go ahead and calculate how many years until Natalie Portman can retire. She can probably retire right now because she's extremely wealthy, but let's go ahead and say that the retirement age is 65. So in order to create a method, here's what we do. Just like any other function, go ahead and give it a name, years left. Looks good. Won't take any parameters. And the first thing that we need to do is calculate, or in other words, give a variable that we can return. So let's go ahead and make a variable named num years, and this is going to store the number of years until she turns 65, because at 65 she can retire. So let's go ahead and just write 65 minus her age, and in order to use this object's age, you use this dot age, and whatever object you pass in for there, it's going to take their age and it's going to subtract it to 65 from 65, excuse me. So I'm 24, so if it was to calculate for me, it would be 41. If someone was 20, it would be 45. If someone was 65, it would be 0. So anyways, how many years until you turn 65? That's what's going to be stored right in here. And now remember, whenever we want it to make a calculation and give us the answer back, we need to return it. Whenever we return something, it takes that calculation and returns it to you. So then you can print out the value of it and cool stuff like that. So num years. So what I like to do is just go ahead and highlight that to make sure they're both the same. And now that they're both the same, we're good to go. So this function is basically going to work like this. Whenever you call this function, it's going to say, alright, what object did you give me? I'm going to take their age, I'm going to subtract it from 65, and I'm going to give you the answer back. Simple enough. But it's saying, alright, here is the blueprint for the object. So how does this object know to use that function? Well, it doesn't just yet. So that's what we have to do in this next line of code. In order to tell this object that basically we want to use this function, or in order to tell it that this function is just not a random function, we actually want to associate it with this object. Here's what we need to do. Just like every other thing, every other object property, you go ahead and assign this dot, and then you write whatever you want your property to be named, and just go ahead and put years until retire or something like that. Did I spell everything right? Looks good enough. So then what you do is you have three properties for your object. Every person in the world has a name, has an age, and has a certain amount of years until they can retire. Their name is whatever we give it, their age is whatever we give it, and the years until retire, it has to make a calculation. What is that calculation going to be based off? It's going to be based off this function right here. So we don't set it equal to a number like 65 or anything like that. We set it equal to the name of this function. So if we go ahead and copy that and paste it, and here's the one thing that can confuse you guys. You don't add parentheses at the end of this. I know it's weird, but they made it this way so your object knows that this method is associated with this object. So this makes sense. We pass it in a name, we pass it in an age. But for this last one, we make it just like any other object property, just like this one or this one. But instead of a value that we pass it in, we set it equal to a name of a function without the parameters. And the reason we don't add parameters for that is because it's going to take all its parameters already from the object. Pretty cool, huh? So now, with that being said, let's just go ahead and use this. So now we can do something like document write. Again, we already have an object, Natalie. Her name's Natalie Portman, and her age is 28. So now, anytime we want to calculate her years until retire, here's what we do. Just go ahead and write the name of the object, Natalie, and then just go ahead and write years. Check it out. She has three properties. We can either print out her name, her age, or years until retire. So just go ahead and copy that, paste it, and here is where you need parameters, just like that. Simple enough. So let's go ahead and print it out, see how it works. 37 years until Natalie Portman can retire. So let's go ahead and make another object real quick. One for me, why not? I'll make an object Bucky. My name is of course Bucky Roberts, and my age is 24. So now let's go ahead and put Bucky years until retire, save it, and see what I get. 41. 41 years until I can retire. So basically, to sum it up one last time, this is what you do whenever you want to add methods to your object. You already have a constructor function with properties. I have a name, I have an age, we know all that. So whenever you want to assign a function to your object, you take the name of the function and you assign it just like you would any other object property. Simple enough. And don't forget, whenever you make your function, the only thing you have to do to get the extra information is put this object's age. If we wanted to print out my name, you would write like document write this name. Easy enough. So then, whenever you want to actually use that function, or excuse me, the method now, you just write the name of your object, and then right there, check it out. Not the function name, but the object property name. Simple enough. So, there are just a couple neat little tricks that you have to watch out for. The first one is don't include your parentheses right here. That's your way of telling JavaScript that this method is actually a part of this object because it has no parentheses. And the last thing is whenever you actually use it, add your parentheses after this. It's a little confusing, but trust me, if you do it like 3 times, you'll get the hang of it and it'll be a breeze. So that is how you add methods to objects. So now we basically learn everything about an object, how to create a constructor function, how to add basic properties, and how to add methods. So simple enough. Thank you guys for watching. And the next tutorial, probably going to be talking about objects a little more. So if you're confused at all, just move on to the next one and got some phlegm in my throat, and you'll be fine. So, again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next tutorial. What is going on, guys? It is Bucky, and welcome to your 28th JavaScript tutorial. Now, before we continue talking about objects, I need to talk to you guys about something called an array. And the reason I need to do this is because objects use very often this thing called an array. So before I start talking to you about how to use an array with your objects, I need to actually teach you guys what an array is, why it's useful, how to create them, and all that fun stuff. So basically, I'm going to put it as simple as possible. An array is basically a way to store multiple values in a single variable, or in other words, a single object. So before we had one variable and one value. Well, now we can have more than one value in the same variable. So you're saying, alright, Bucky, that just seems confusing, complex. Why on earth would you want to do that? Well, believe it or not, whenever you're working with long lists of like people's names or ages or maybe a long list of social security numbers, it's a lot easier and faster to create an array, and it's a lot more easier to manage whenever you're working with a long list. There you go. So let me show you guys a quick example of something you would need to create an array with. So for example, if you had to list like a bunch of people's names, you might do this: var person 1 equals Bucky, var person 2 equals Tommy, and you do this 800 times. Well, that's going to take 800 lines of code, and then if you had to print them all out, it would take another 800 lines of code, and it just gets all jumbled. So an easier way we can do this is to create something called an array, and then whenever you had to list them all and print them out, it might only take 10 lines of code. So now you can begin seeing the advantages. So let's go ahead and learn how to first create an array. Creating an array is similar to creating a new object, and by that I mean you go ahead and type a variable and then you type the name of your array. So let's go ahead and make an array with a bunch of people's names. So I'm going to name my array people. Makes sense? So now what you have to do, just like when you're creating a new instance, new, but instead of your object name, you go ahead and write the name array. And this is built in. This is always going to be named array. And this tells JavaScript we're about to create a new array. Plain and simple. Now, as your parameters, you go ahead and type all of the values you want to store in that people array. So the first value I want to store is Bucky. The second one is Tommy. The third one is Sarah. The fourth one is Hannah with one end. Who cares? And the fifth one is Mikey. Mikey T. Who the heck cares? So now you can see, instead of creating 5 different lines with 5 different variables and 5 different values, we made this all on one line. How easy and compact is that? So now you're saying, alright, that kind of makes sense. So you have 5 different values in one variable, it looks like. So whenever I'm trying to use this later on, like document, if I spell it right, document.write. Okay, Bucky, how am I supposed to print out like the name Bucky or something? Well, if I go ahead and type people, I know that's the name of the array, but how does it know what one I'm supposed to be talking about right here? Well, we have an array created right here, and whenever we want to access one of the values of it, we have to add something called an array index. Now, an array index is basically this. Each of these values in here is numbered, and remember, whenever you teach a kid to count, you probably tell them to start at 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But with computers, computers talk in all zeros and ones. And just remember, anytime you're working with computers, computers learn to start counting at 0. People learn to start counting at 1. So this computer is going to say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So whenever you want to access this one, it wouldn't be 3, it would be 0, 1, 2. Alright, so now we know that each of these values is labeled with a number called an index. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So how do we access that? Well, you go ahead and you write the name of your array, and then in between square brackets, you write the number of that index. So Bucky would be 0. So now if we go ahead and save this and print it out, check it out, Bucky right there. So now let's go ahead and access like something like Hannah. 0, 1, 2, 3. So people 3 should be Hannah. Save that and print it out. Hannah. Simple enough. So the only thing that you have to remember is this. In order to create an array, just go ahead and write the name of your array, and then go ahead and write new array, and then write as many values as you want inside your array. And anytime you want to access it, you just write the name of your array, and in between square brackets, go ahead and write that index. And remember, unlike whenever people count, computers don't start with 1, they start with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can access any of these elements by using the index 0 through 4. And look what happens whenever you try to access something outside like 5. It's going to give you something called undefined because your computer is not going to know what you're talking about. So go ahead and save this and refresh, and it says undefined. This is pretty much JavaScript's way of saying you got an error, you did something wrong, go fix it. So basically that is how you create an array, and in the future tutorials I'm going to be showing you why these are useful and why it's a lot easier than creating just multiple variables. But for now, that's all I got for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to check out my website, and I'll see you next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 29th tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you guys some different ways to create an array. The first way I'm going to show you guys is how to create an array by you basically tell it how many things you're going to store in it, and then you store the things in it. So unlike before where you do everything at once, this is just a different way where you can create an array. So the first thing that we need to do is create the array and tell it how many items we're going to store in it. So I'm going to make an array called things, and of course you set it equal to new array, and instead of listing all your items in there, what you need to do is just list a number. So I'm going to say 3. This tells our array that we're going to store 3 items in it. So now what we need to do is we need to treat each index like a variable and assign it a value. But remember, we don't start at 1, then go to 2 to 3. Since we're storing 3 things in it, we start with 0, and then we go to 1, and then we go to 2. So even though we said we're going to store 3 things in you, we actually never use the index of 3, just 0, 1, and 2. In 0, 1, and 2, that's 3 things. So in order to assign values to these variables, things, 0, and then you just assign a value to this, like, I don't know, what's one thing? Jersey Shore. Looks good. So now what we need to do is we need to do this 2 more times. So just go ahead and copy this, and just like that, easy. There we go. So things 0, 1, and 2. So we can list Jersey Shore in all of them, but let's go ahead and list Jersey Shore. Brian Regan. That's one of my favorite comedians. And also, as a third one, the New Boston. So now what we did is this. We created the shell of the array by basically saying, alright, we're creating an empty array called things, but we're gonna be storing 3 things in it. So what this does is JavaScript says, alright computer, set aside some space, so when he enters the 3 things, you can do it just fine. So believe it or not, you can actually make some code right here and then do it later on. It doesn't have to be right after it, but I just did it right after because I really don't have anything else to code. So just like before, whenever we want to access one of our items in our array, let's just go ahead and print it out on screen. Document write. You do it just like normal. Type the name of your array and then the index just like that. Now whenever you print it out, check it out. The New Boston. So unlike before, say you wanted to make an array and then you wanted to write some code and then you wanted to assign values to those indexes. This is one alternative way you can do this. And actually later on I'm going to be showing you some programs where you need to do it this way. You don't always have the availability to make an array and list all your items in there right as you create your array. Sometimes you have to wait to I don't know, maybe the user needs to enter information, or maybe you need to go grab it from a database. So you can't always add all your information in your array as soon as you create it. So that's why I needed to show you guys this. Now the last different kind of way, I guess I could say, of making an array is it's pretty much the same as we did before, but instead of adding a number where it sets aside space, we're not going to add any number at all. And this is going to create an empty array, an array that we can add items to dynamically or change the size as it goes on. So say we wanted to create an array of um, things that the user likes. But the thing is, we don't know how many things they're going to put. So we don't know the size of the array right now. And we also can't create an array and list all the items right now because, like I said, we don't know how many things they like. We don't know what they like. So we pretty much just need to create the shell of an array. So in order to do that, here's what you do. Go ahead and make a variable and name it like stuff or something like that. I don't know, name your array anything you want. And then, of course, you type new array, but since we don't know how many items are going to be placed in this array or even what the items are, just go ahead and add empty parentheses just like that. What this does is saying, alright, I'm going to create an array and I'm going to call it stuff, but I'm just going to add elements as you tell me to add them. I'm not going to set aside 4 spaces, and I'm not going to add anything to it by default. I'm pretty much just creating an array right now, so later on, whenever you want to use this array, it's available to you. So you can actually, maybe do some random coding. Variable x equals 9, variable tuna equals 54 or 65 minus 54, and you do all your coding you need to. And then later on when you say, hey, I actually need to use that array right now, here's what you do. Just go ahead and take whatever index you need to store that value in and store anything you want in it, like Baconator, just like that. Looks pretty good. And then you can do this as many times as you want. So you're not limited to, 4 spots or 3 spots or whatever. You can go ahead and add your items dynamically as you need them. So stuff 1 equals old pumpkins, just like that. So now you can see this is a kind of a different way of making an array. Like I said, this pretty much just creates an array that you can use later on. And then, of course, whenever you need to actually use those indexes, you can, just like we have always before. Document dot write, and then just go ahead and type the name of your array, which was stuff, and type the index, which was 1, and this should print out old pumpkins on the screen. Check it out, old pumpkins. Pretty cool, huh? So that is how you create an array using the method of assigning space beforehand and also creating an empty array. So now, with all of our information, we know how to create an array 3 different kinds of ways. And you might think, alright, I just use the one whatever works for me, whatever I think is the best. Well, sometimes you can do this, but other times when you're writing a program, you need to use one over the other. It's a lot better too. So keep all of these in mind. Just don't remember one of them and think that you can forget about the other two. So anyways, that's all I have for you right now. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to your 30th tutorial. And like I said before, arrays are indeed objects. And since they are objects, and that we know objects have properties and methods, does this mean arrays have properties and methods? Well, yes, it does. So let me give you an example of both. The first thing we need to do is obviously create an array. So let's go ahead and create an array called dudes, and we'll just set this equal to new array, and we'll make this the easy way. And we'll just go ahead and put like Bucky, Dan for Dan Henderson, and Randy for Randy Couture. If you know who those people are, then let me know. Thumbs up. So we go ahead and we made an array. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the properties. There are several built-in properties, but probably the most common property that you're going to use when working with array is the length. Now the length property is just a number telling you how many items are in your array. So document write, of course, put the name of your array, which is dudes, and in order to access the property, just like anything else when working with objects, use the dot separator and the name of the property, which is length. Now, if you want to take a look at all the properties, then there's probably a website you can go to, but like I said, the length one it's basically the only one I ever use when programming, and it's the one that you're going to use most commonly. So you see right here it says 3 because I have Bucky, Dan, and Randy. There are 3 elements. That's all it does. So we know that array has properties such as length, but what exactly are the methods associated with this object? I mean, how many different things can we do to an array? Well, in order to use some of the methods, you typically need another array, and that is because a lot of the methods deal with either combining the arrays or adding one array to another one or sorting through an array. So let's go ahead and create another array right now so we can go ahead and take a look at an example. So we already have a array called dudes. Let's go ahead and make another array called chicks and set equal to new, easy caps lock, new array, and set this equal to 3 girl names. Lisa, Aaron, and also Hannah. So now we have 2 arrays, dude and chicks. So the first method I want to show you, it's probably the easiest method to understand. It's called the concat, and I think this is short for concatenate, and it pretty much does this. It takes 2 arrays and adds them together, and it creates an entirely new array. So let's go ahead and create a new array called people, and we're going to set this equal to, it's pretty much going to combine this array with this array. But you're saying, alright, how do I know what order it combines them in and how the elements are listed? Well, it's going to take one array and stick it on the end of another array. So what array do you want to be at the beginning? So I want dudes to be at the beginning, and in order to use this method, again, use the dot separator, which is concat, and as your parameter you list what array do you want to stick on the end of this, and I want chicks to be on the end of this. So what this is going to do is it's going to take the dudes array and stick chicks on the end of it. So now we have a new array called people with 6 different elements in it: Bucky, Dan, Randy, Lisa, Aaron, Hannah. That's our brand new array stored in people. So we already created that, so let's just go ahead and print out something on the screen like document dot write, and let's just go ahead and write the last element of people, and that would be the 5th, because remember this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this should, if I'm correct, print out Hannah, and check it out. It did just like that. So now you're saying, alright, I get the idea of concat, but what if I wanted this array first and this one second? Well, all you'd have to do is take that chicks and add dude to the end of it, or dudes, excuse me, and now Randy would be the last element. So let's go ahead and refresh and check it out, Randy. So that's an example of one method that we can use when we take a look at arrays. So now I just wanted to stress in this tutorial that arrays are indeed objects, and every object has properties such as the length, and it also has methods that you can use. And we took a look at one method, which is concat, and all concat does is it takes 2 arrays, sticks them together, and puts it into a brand new array. So pretty cool, huh? So that is what I want to talk to you guys about in this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to be talking more about some other array methods, and they're going to be a lot more useful, and trust me, there's a lot to learn when it comes to array methods, so you definitely don't want to miss out on it. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 31st JavaScript tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you about a couple new methods. The first method I want to talk about is something called the join method. Now what the join method does is it takes an array, it converts it to a string. So this method is really useful whenever you have an array and you want to output all the elements to the user. So this is the main method that people use whenever they're converting it to a string. So again, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So let's go ahead and create an array of my favorite movies and just set equal to new array, and I'm gonna go ahead and Avatar. That was a pretty good movie, even though I'm spelling it wrong. And let's see, Good Will Hunting, one of my faves. And let's see, Vanilla Sky, kind of quirky, but hey, I liked it. And let's add one more. Fight. Wow, definitely type that wrong. Fight Club, just like that. So now let's see how many movies I have. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 elements in the array. So if you're saying, alright, what's an easy way where we can convert this to a string? Well, what we can do is go ahead and make a regular variable and just go ahead and name it string1. So we're going to make a string variable. So in order to do this, here's what we need to do. Go ahead and write the name of your array, movies, and then go ahead using a dot separator, we're going to call the method join. Now, it doesn't take any parameters, and what it does is it's going to take every element in your array, separate it with a comma, and convert it to a string. So now that string is stored in the variable string1. So now whenever we want to document, write this on the screen, we just have to write string1. And now let's go ahead and save this and see what we get. Avatar, Good Will Hunting, Vanilla Sky, and Fight Club. And as I told you, it doesn't take any parameters, and whenever it doesn't take any parameters, by default, it separates your list with a comma. But if you're saying, alright, what if I want to separate it with something other than a comma, like a hyphen or something like that? Well, it doesn't take any parameters by default, but you can pass in a parameter if you want. It's optional. If you do pass in a parameter, then it's going to exchange that comma for something else. So for example, if we use a hyphen instead of nothing, what it does is it changes all those commas to hyphens. So check it out. Now you can have a customized string depending on, well, first you need to use that join method, and it actually depends on what parameter you pass it in. And one thing you may have noticed, make sure you pass your parameters in between quotation marks, because you're passing it in as a string technically. So just want to throw that out there. So now we know how to convert an array to a string. Pretty cool, definitely useful. But another method that I want to teach you guys about is called the pop method, P-O-P. And what this does is it removes the last element from an array. So for example, I have 4 elements in here, and the index is 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's go ahead and just write out like document dot write. Let's go ahead and write the last element just to verify that it is indeed there, and that would be movies index 3. And let's go ahead and add a break because we're going to be needing it later on. So now what should appear is Fight Club. It's the 3rd index, which is the 4th element. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So Fight Club, as we just saw on the screen, is the last element in the array. So now if we call this pop method, and in order to do that, just go ahead and write the name of your array object, movies, and add pop. Now pop doesn't take any parameters, but what it does do is it's pretty much gonna alter your array where it's still called movies, but now instead of having 4 elements, it only has 3. So now your movies array consists of Avatar, Good Will Hunting, and Vanilla Sky. So now we're saying, alright, what happens if we try to document.write that element out now, which is movies 3. Well, movies 3 doesn't even exist anymore since it only has 0, 1, 2. So it's going to give you an undefined. So check it out. At beginning, we made an array called movies. It had 4 elements. Whenever we printed out the last element, it gave us Fight Club. Appropriate. And then we altered the array. We said, alright, for this movies array, call the method pop. And what this pop did is it took the last element and it popped it off. So now our array only had 3 elements, 0, 1, and 2. So whenever we tried to print out the 4th element, it said undefined. So that is what the pop method does. It pretty much removes the last element from the array. And what we can do here is call it again, and then it would only have 2 in it. So again, we can call it as many times as we want. It's pretty much simple, self-explanatory. So now that you saw it, you can begin moving on to my next tutorial. So remember, join converts an array to a string, and pop removes the last element from the array. So as long as you understand those concepts, you're ready to move on to my next tutorial. So thank you guys very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next video.